Mr. Geir Pedersen, the special UN envoy to Syria, welcome to our screen, sir.
Thank you so much. Very glad that I could be with you today.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start with your message of regret today that you have expressed graciously or during your Security Council briefing. You said you regretted that the United Nations was not able to reach a political solution until now, after 10 years to the Syrian crisis. Now, we all know, of course, in Syria now today, we have millions of IDPs within the country. We also have millions, even more, living as refugees abroad. Many struggle daily just to survive. 9 out of 10, as you said in the council, live under the line of poverty in Syria, and the World Food Programme has assessed that more than 9 million, nearly 9.5 or 10 million Syrians are threatened with food insecurity. Beside your regrets, is there a message of hope that you want to relay and to send at this moment to the Syrian people to give them hope in the end of the tunnel?
Yes, thank you. Yes, you're right. I express my deep felt regret that we have not been able to mediate an end to this conflict after 10 years. And of course, I spend a lot of time reflecting on why that is the case. And so I do believe today that there is actually a window of opportunity. There is a possibility to be able to get out of this, this terrible nightmare that the Syrian people has been through. And there are a couple of elements that I think it's important to highlight. One is that we have now had nearly 1 year of what I call a relative calm, where the front lines in Syria has not shifted. This is important. Of course, that relative calm is if you were to compare that with other places on the globe, it would have been too much. But still, compared to the other 9 years, it's important to emphasize that the fact that the front lines have not shifted, and that this is my second point, this has led to a new assessment by the key international players in the arena. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that the key players now understand that what they have said before, that there is no military solution to this conflict, that we are in a situation where no one can dictate the outcome of this conflict, meaning that the Syrian government can't, the opposition can't, Ankara cannot, Tehran cannot, Moscow cannot, and Washington cannot. So all of these players need to come together, together with our Arab friends, and of course also with the Europeans, and to find a negotiated way out of it. And I'm saying that because during my latest round of discussions, as I said, my sense is that this has created a window of opportunity where there is an understanding that the political process needs now to get priority. So, this will not be easy. It will be very difficult.
Sir, I'd like to concentrate on the Constitutional Committee talks in Geneva, especially that these talks are the only talks that are taking place between Syrians at the time being, and many consider it as the gate to the political process as a whole, because without the constitution we can't have elections, we cannot have referendum, etc., etc. So the whole political process and the implementation of resolution 2254 start from the Constitutional Committee and the writing or drafting of the Constitution. But many would say that the Constitutional Committee mandate is to draft a constitution. And until today, and after it started its work on the 19th of October 2019, until 18 months later, they haven't succeeded in drafting one line of the Constitution. What do you say to these critics?
well, frankly speaking, I think we have to give the critics right that the Constitutional Committee has not lived up to its promise. As you rightly stated, it is part of Security Council Resolution 2254, and I always said that the committee in itself, it can of course not solve the conflict, but it could be an important element in creating trust between the Syrian parties and open the door to other issues that needs to be solved if we are to solve the Syrian crisis. When I said that it needs to build trust, I've also said that what we have seen during the 5 rounds where the Syrian opposition, the Syrian government, and the so-called middle third have met in Geneva, we haven't been successful in building that trust. So that's why I said after the last round of meetings that things had to change. It can't continue like this. We now have to agree on a working method where we actually start doing what we were mandated to do, and that is to draft different articles to a new constitution. If I may add, I've had some very good rounds with the 2 co-chairs, the co-chairs nominated by the government and the co-chairs nominated by the SNC, the opposition, during the last few days. And I'm hopeful that within the not too distant future, it will be possible to come together again and then to start to implement the agreement that we have so that we actually start moving this process forward in a manner that builds trust and can then send a message to the Syrian people that there is hope for the political process in Syria.
Sir, after ringing the warning bells in your last briefing in February, you went on a tour for talks in Moscow and Istanbul with the opposition and also in Damascus with the government of Syria. Do you believe that the Syrian parties will deliver what you need to facilitate the committee's work and its success, which is an agreement on a constructive methodology agreement during any upcoming round of talks, and that's, I mean, the 6th round of talks in Geneva,
yes,
if we to see it?
Yes, I believe that's perfectly possible. You know, I think we already have the foundations for a possible agreement. And I believe that if both the government and the opposition respect the terms of reference that we have agreed upon many months back, it should be possible to also agree on a working method and to start meeting in a constructive manner in Geneva. However, when it comes to the broader issues of how to solve the Syrian crisis, we cannot leave that only to the Syrian parties. There we will need a good international cooperation that I have already alluded to.
Yes, we understand that there are 2 sessions for every day with 2 hours for each session during the talks, and that there are proposals now to increase it to 3 hours. And we also understand that the opposition is asking to discuss 2 articles per session, not 1 article. Do you believe that the parties would accept a sort of a settlement on these details, and would you support and would the parties accept the setting of a time limit for each article of discussion?
Listen, these are discussions that I will be having with the 2 co-chairs, and I think it would be unfair if I entered into a dialogue with them via you. So I will continue to have a quiet discussion with my 2 good friends, and then we will take it from there, I believe. But it was a good try.
No, I'll try. But from your smile, I get the impression that these points are surmountable.
Listen, as I said, I believe, I sense from my discussion with the co-chair nominated by the government and the co-chair nominated by the SNC that there is a willingness to move forward and to find a common approach to this so that we can actually start moving the process forward in a manner that will send a message to the Syrian people that there are serious work being done in Geneva when it comes to the Constitutional Committee.
The process must be Syrian-led, and Syrian owned. But the conflict, as you rightly stated today, the Security Council is internationalized with the existence of 5 foreign armies in Syria, and we can't pretend that the solution is only in the hands of the Syrian or that the UN can do it alone. That is why we need more serious diplomacy, and these are your words in previous Security Council meetings. We need more serious diplomacy, international diplomacy. This should be possible. We saw 3 previous special envoys, Kofi Annan, Al-HADATH al-Ibrahimi, Stefan de Mistura. When they resigned, they all stated that the reason for that is the split within the council, within the international community, and within the region. Do you believe that the circumstances now enable you to lead a successful facilitator role within this process and lead it to the shores?
Listen, I believe you summarized it very well, and that, but as you are indicating, this is of course extremely difficult. And let me be honest and frank with you, I have no illusions that it will not continue to be difficult. There are today deep mistrust between Moscow and Washington, between Moscow and the European Union. But what I'm appealing to is that when it comes to Syria, there are actually areas where there are common strategic interests. And based on this, it should be possible to move forward, and also with the understanding that if we do not move forward now, the greatest risk is that perhaps one is that we will have the relative calm that is in place could unravel. But the second risk is that we will see not an unraveling of the calm, but a stasis, that we will see, that the current sort of development will continue, so that the Syrian people will continue to live in permanent crisis, economic disaster. As you said, 9 out of 10 living in poverty, 11 million people in need of food support. All of these would become even more difficult, not to talk about the millions of refugees surrounding Syria. All of this could be, an invitation to even stronger disaster for the future that could have, not only negative consequences for the Syrian people, but for the region and for the broader international society.
In the Qatar conference by foreign ministers of Qatar and Turkey and Russia, it was declared that the 6th round will be convened by the end of March. Is that realistic announcement during the conference in Qatar?
My message to the Security Council today was that we need to agree on the working methods. And when we have that agreement in place, we will call for a meeting as soon as possible.
Okay. If you can't convene by the end of March, in April we have Easter, we have the Ramadan starting on the 13th, then we have the elections in the summer in Syria. When are we going to have the 6th meeting of the Constitution Committee as you perceive it?
I think it would be wrong on me now to give any indications of when that will happen. But my hope is that as soon as we have an agreement, we will also be able to identify a date that will be convenient for the Syrian parties to meet in Geneva. But you're right, there are a few obstacles. There are, obviously we all know that Ramadan is coming soon. So we will see when it will be possible. But my focus now is to have an agreement on the working methods and procedure for how to move this process forward.
I have one last question, which is the Syrian presidential election this summer. The United States ambassador and president of the council has said today, I asked the international community to not be fooled by the Syrian election. They will not be free, and they will not be fair, and they will not meet the criteria stated in Resolution 2254. The Europeans have started a drive to approve a document submitted by France that rejects any presidential election not based on United Nations Security Council Resolution 2254. How does the United Nations view this presidential election held in Syria this summer?
As you know, my mandate in Security Council Resolution 2254 is to work on constitutional reform, and then pursuant to that constitutional reform, to organize and supervise free and fair elections in Syria. So elections that are taking place under the current constitution is not within my mandate. So the United Nations have nothing to do. We have nothing to do with the previous parliamentary election, with the previous presidential election, and we will have also then nothing to do with the upcoming presidential election.
Nothing to do equals you don't recognize these elections.
As I said, those elections are not part of my mandate. What we are working on is to prepare for elections that will take place, as I said, under UN supervision to the highest international standards. And I have one electoral officer who is, working hard and preparing for the day that hopefully will come in the not too distant future, where we also can then get involved and discussing these kinds of elections.
Mr. Geir Pedersen, United Nations Special Envoy to Syria, we thank you for your insight and we thank you for your time and for this interview. And we wish you the very best of luck, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A pleasure being with you.
Thank you, sir.